over on the left, Sam Jadin ad nauseum. You saw him just on camera picking up his 9th win. That was the last match of yesterday. His opponent this time, Caleb Durward. Caleb on quite the win streak with Bant Spirits. 2-0 today, won his last 3 rounds yesterday.
Both players in great position to possibly make the top 8 of this event.
Caleb just all this looking like a powerful wizard here. He has his cloak, beard, gauntlets.
Well, Caleb is a powerful wizard, so
Yeah.
he looks the part.
And I mean, you know, and as you're very familiar with, wizards can wear, I believe, only cloth, maybe some lighter leathers, which his gauntlets certainly. He's definitely sticking to the rules of his armor class.
Checks out.
So turn 1, Sam's on the play. Turn 1 suspends a Lotus Bloom. Turn 2 plays a Temple. This is pretty much where he wants to be. Caleb plays a fetch land on turn 1, no Noble Hierarch.
Yep. The no Noble for Caleb, bad news in this kind of matchup. Doesn't have a ton of interaction. Notably, Lotus Bloom is something that Caleb can tag with a Spell Queller.
I was going to ask you that because, yeah, there's the mana cost, convert mana cost is 0 on it.
Right. So 1 Lotus Bloom, Spell Queller is good. If Jadin had 2 Lotus Blooms, it'd be a different game. But the texture here, that card that only matters sometimes, is looking like it could matter in this game.
Yeah, what I actually really like about Bloom and Spell Queller is that Caleb knows exactly when the Lotus Bloom is going to happen.
Yes.
Now, looking at Sam's hand, he's got a lot of good tools here. He has both Angel's Grace and Ad Nauseam in his hand, as well as Pact of Negation. So when this Bloom comes off suspend, I believe Sam is 1 land from just forcing lethal action.
Right. It's basically just a free roll to Pact of Negation a Spell Queller if it gets in the way of the Lotus Bloom, assuming he's able to make a 3rd land drop.
Yeah, and that Temple may have helped him get there. Pentad Prism, the draw. Caleb had his first play of the game was a turn 2 Selfless Spirit, the 2-1. Sam's turn 3 will be Pentad Prism, 2 charge counters, no land. It looks like he's setting up for a turn 4 kill.
Caleb almost needs multiple Mausoleum Wanderers here.
Swings Selfless Spirit, says go. Lotus Bloom comes off suspend for Sam. This is Caleb's 1 play. He's going to try to Spell Quell it. Sam knows he has this. So we're going to show you just how this Ad Nauseam combo works. Caleb goes for Spell Queller. Sam Pact of Negations it. Queller is countered. Lotus Bloom resolves. So now Sam has 3 mana from the Bloom, 2 mana from his lands, and 2 mana from Pentad Prism, all available this turn.
Yep, just needs 6 of it. It looks like he has 7 available total. Gonna cast an Angel's Grace, gonna cast Ad Nauseam, gonna draw 50 cards.
Yeah, draws for turn, so we'll walk you through it. Angel's Grace from Sam. He cannot lose the game this turn. Lotus Bloom makes 3 black mana. Here's Ad Nauseam. Spends 5. So Ad Nauseam, reveal the top card of his library and put that card into your hand. Lose life equal to its mana cost. Well, Sam can't lose the game this turn, so he's going to reveal all the cards. Go to a negative life total. Caleb's scooping because he knows how this works. So I think he wants to know what the kill is. But what Sam does is puts the entire deck into his hand. Then he exiles 3 copies of Simian Spirit Guide from his deck, making 3 red mana. He casts the card Lightning Storm, which lets him, until end of turn, discard lands to deal 2 damage. And well, he picked up his whole deck, so he's going to find a lot of lands. 18 is no problem. Game 1 to Sam Jadin.
Sometimes you want to make your opponent show you the kill. There were some funny things that happened when Dragon Storm was legal in Standard. Players would try to get people and just not put the win condition in their deck that they had to search for. This deep in a tournament, somebody would have called you by now. Caleb doesn't need to see that. He knows how the deck works.
So we're going to look to sideboarding. Bant Spirits, Caleb is... this is a tough one for him, right? Because his clock is somewhat slow. I don't know. If he wants to race Ad Nauseam, that's hard. So he's going to have to look to interact. You talked about Mausoleum Wanderer and Spell Queller. I'm going to look through the sideboard. Does he have any other methods of interaction?
Yeah, so we have 3 copies of Stony Silence, 3 Rest in Peace, a Path to Exile, 2 Engineered Explosives, a Spellskite, 2 Kasali Pride Mage, 2 Blessed Alliance, and a Rox Warmonk. Really, he just wants to get these Path to Exiles and probably the Steal of the Godheads out of his main deck. I like Stony Silence. You can shut off the Pentad Prisms, the Lotus Blooms. Those are cards that are going to accelerate Jadin's plan. That could have won the game that we just saw play out.
Yeah.
Yep. And beyond that, there's not a lot else that's going on. You can use Kasali Pride Mage to tag a Pentad Prism. And it also accelerates his clock. If he wants to get the Steal of the Godhead out of his deck, I like that exchange. Mostly, we're just looking at Stony Silence, though.
Yeah, and I want to just talk for a second about Spellskite, because if Sam's kill is Lightning Storm, you might think, oh, he could Spellskite the Lightning Storm. Now, there's a couple problems with this. Mainly, when Sam draws his whole deck, he has a 1 of Slaughter Pact. He will then draw. He could kill the Skite first. He also has a 1 of Laboratory Maniac as a second way to win the game.
Right, but there's a lot of cards that seem like they could work on the stack after Ad Nauseam resolves. None of them actually work the way the deck is configured.
Right, the problem is Sam draws his whole deck, so as long as there's a 1 of answer to whatever Caleb's card is, that doesn't work once the Ad Nauseam's happened.
Exactly.
All right, on Sam Jadin's side, we have 3 Hurkyl's Recalls, 4 Leyline of Sanctity, a Phyrexian Unlife, an Esper Charm, 2 Thoughtseize, an additional Slaughter Pact, 2 Spellskites, and then the last Pact of Negation.
So this matchup's already fairly positive for Jadin. There's not a lot he needs to do for sideboarding. I like the Thoughtseizes. You know, this is a blue deck. It's playing Innocent Speed. That's reasonable. Pact of Negation, we saw that was clutch in that game there. So I like bringing in Pact of Negation in matchups like this where your opponent is casting a lot of flash stuff that'll really shore this up. So Thoughtseize and Pact of Negation and possibly Slaughter Pact are what we're looking at.
Players going to get ready for Game 2. Now, it's game night somewhere over at StarCityGames.com. Of course, Game Night is a promotion where you win exclusive pins and tokens here from Star City just for playing the tournaments at your local stores. So we get exclusive ones every month. This month, we have been giving away the Hedgehog token. This is the one you see both on our jackets and on the screen here. You can win a pin and token just by playing in whatever format event at a store near you. So next month, we will be giving away the Mole Warden. This is a 2/1 Mole Cleric token. See, I like this one because it's a Heliod token. As you know, those enchantment tokens were sparkly, and so Mole Warden has fireflies in the picture.
Yep, natural sparkles.
All right, and if you get signed up right now, if your store wants to sign up for it, we can get you signed up in time for the December promo, and that is the Fintuition token. This is, of course, the parody on the card from Tempest, Intuition, and it's also a 6/6 whale.
If they were to print Intuition in a standard legal format, it would probably be a 6/6.
Yeah, they tack it onto some sort of large sea creature.
With flash.
Huge fan of these. Find a game night near you or sign up at starcitygames.com/game night. We are underway. Game 2, Caleb on the play, starts on Breeding Pool. For the second game in a row, he does not have a turn 1 Noble Hierarch.
Post sideboard, that matters a little bit less. We'll see if he has a turn 2 Stony Silence.
Sam, though, he's got a turn 1 Lotus Bloom. Plays his Temple as well. For Caleb, the 1-drops seem pretty important. Both Noble Hierarch and Mausoleum Wanderer are things I'd be very interested in.
Yeah, they're among his better cards in this sort of matchup.
Lotus Bloom ticks down to 2. Sam's second turn, plays a land. Temple of Silence will cast Thoughtseize. This is a card out of his sideboard.
This is going to be good because with Jadin's setup here, once again, we'll see the kind of game where Spell Queller on Lotus Bloom is likely Caleb's plan for coming out and actually beating a Lotus Bloom, given that he did not have the turn 2 Stony Silence. So the Thoughtseize seems quite significant.
Caleb's going to fetch in response. He'll put the Rattle Chains from his hand into play, flash that in, and now let's Thoughtseize resolve. We see 3 more lands, Selfless Spirit, and Geist of St. Traft. It looks like Caleb was going to try to race with Rattle Chains into Geist. Thoughtseize may throw a wrench into that.
The reason that this hand is keepable is because Caleb just does not have that much stuff. To try to mulligan into it, you probably end up having to keep a non-functional or less functional hand. He at least knows he has 2-drop into Geist, and the Ad Nauseam deck can stumble. If there's no Lotus Bloom, you're under no threat to die on turn 4 in a lot of the draws, and if you just peel Stony Silence off the top from here, it's great, and Geist is as fast as possible clock. So this hand does not look terribly impressive, but I think it is a solid keep.
Well, what I like from Caleb is the math here. So say he plays turn 2 Rattle Chains, turn 3 Geist. Your first attack is for 2. Your second attack is for 8.
Yep.
So that puts Sam down to 10. On turn 4, if Caleb had drew Drogskull Captain, it would be exactly for 10. So it would be he was 1 card away from a turn 5 kill, which is about as fast as he goes.
Right. Unfortunately for Caleb, looks like it's been a lot of lands off the top.
Yeah, Rattle Chain swings in, Caleb just passes. Lotus Bloom goes down to 1. Go to Sam's turn 3. Sam is setting up for a turn 4 kill. Caleb's certainly not going to be able to race it, so he's going to have to try to stop it. Phyrexian Unlife to play for Jadin, and no reply for Caleb. So now we are just, 1 Ad Nauseam from comboing?
Yep, just Ad Nauseam with the Unlife will combine to allow him to draw his deck. And I like that Caleb is still able to represent Spell Queller here because you wouldn't necessarily cast it on the Unlife. You care a lot more about the Lotus Bloom from this position.
Yeah.
So you're still kind of disguising the card you drew from that turn, the card you're going to draw on the next turn. And cool thing about Rattle Chains, it'll allow him to cast that Selfless Spirit with Flash here.
Oh, right. Rattle Chains gives other spirit creatures Flash. I was wondering why he didn't play it that turn.
Yeah, it's a really weird card. It has a lot of relevant text on it.
Okay, so end step, Caleb makes the 2-1.
If you're used to Welkin Turn being a 2-1 flyer with
Yeah.
downside, Rattle Chains just has all this upside tacked onto the same body.
All right, a good draw for Caleb here. He was flooding out, but on the very pivotal turn, he draws Stony Silence. He's going to attack for 4, put Sam down to 12. Now, Stony Silence has a mean one. It turns off activated abilities of artifacts, and there's no exception for mana abilities. They just all are turned off. So this Lotus Bloom that's about to happen does nothing.
Yep, you can resolve it, you just can't activate it.
A draw for Sam. He draws Serum Visions.
And for Jadin, there's no way to get Stony Silence off the table. I guess he has sideboard Esper Charm.
Okay.
Maybe you bring that in if you suspect Stony Silence out of your opponent.
Well, he may not need much work. You see, Sam's hand has a land, an Ad Nauseam, an Angel's Grace, a Pact of Negation.
Yeah, you can make land drops, I suppose.
Yeah, you can just play it on 5 mana. He's not too far away. What's interesting here is that Sam has land 4 in hand. On his scry, he saw land 5. I believe it comes into play tapped. So he's looking at a turn 6 kill. But that might be okay. You see, he scries both to the top.
Yeah, he's only on a 3-turn clock currently. So assuming Caleb's up to nothing else. And he knows about a bunch of lands in Caleb's hand from here.
Well, it's much more than a 3-turn clock. Phyrexian Unlife is actually still on the battlefield.
Oh, right, yeah. That on the table makes it a lot harder for it to
it'd be a
kill
swing
him.
for 4. So it would take Caleb 3 turns to get Sam to 0. Then it would take 3 more turns of impact. He's got so much time to work with.
Yeah, you're right. Not to mention that even with the land entering the battlefield tapped in the following turn, he could spend a turn paying for Pact of Negation if he really had to.
Yeah, he has Angel's Grace in hand. He could fog with it.
Can also do that.
I like that Caleb has boarded in his relevant hate card. The difficulty just seems to be that to beat Ad Nauseam, because it's a hard deck to interact with. That's one of the strengths. It's not particularly fast, so a lot of aggro decks can race it. We saw yesterday Michael Janney with Zoo just racing the Ad Nauseam player. Caleb is his deck is so much worse at doing that.
Well, he was set up to race it. If you don't Thoughtseize the Geist of Saint draft, this is a very different game, having the top deck Stony Silence to slow him down. So the Thoughtseize was really everything here. And the thing about Caleb's deck, he's just a bunch of creatures, as opposed to a deck like Burn, where you would not want Thoughtseize, because it doesn't do very much. You have a specific 1 or 2 cards, Geist of Saint draft, Collected Company, that just matter more than your other cards, and it makes Thoughtseize a lot better than Caleb, also because he's less aggressive.
So Caleb attacked Sam down to 8, then goes and gets a land. Sam's turn 5 play was just that Darkslick Shores, the land he'd scried to the top. It came into play tapped, sure. Sam just played it and said go.
Yep, that's fine.
He's got the Ad Nauseam in hand with Pact of Negation backup. Says, I'll win this turn. I can counter. It's going to take a lot from Caleb to beat through that Ad Nauseam.
And once again, everything that Caleb can commit to this had to have come off the top of his deck since that Thoughtseize.
Caleb, you see a tap for 4 there. Says, I'm going to play Collected Company. No. I mean, it looks like he could. It would be a great play. But he doesn't have it. He's just going to untap.
And I like posturing as if you have it, because Collected Company and a Spell Queller could potentially be something that Jadin has to worry about. And there's other cards in the format that you could theoretically hit that he has to think about any legal hit off of Collected Company.
Botanical Sanctum from Kaladesh. That's the land for Caleb. I believe his hand has just 2 more lands. So he attacks Sam down to 4. He needs to make Sam think that the coast isn't clear.
And from Sam's side, the longer you wait, the more likely Caleb is to have multiple points of interaction. Right now, the Pact of Negation has one thing covered. You just have to go for it.
Yeah, if Sam had something like a Spoils of the Vault or another Serum Visions, he might try to set up and get a second Pact of Negation just to be extra sure. You see right now he's going to cast Angel's Grace, exile Simian Spirit Guide, cast Ad Nauseam. So he can't lose this turn. Also, he's got double protection with Phyrexian Unlife. It looks like he was doing this. I mentioned it so that in case Caleb had somebody to remove Unlife in response. So Angel's Grace says he can't. Oh, he says he can't go below 1. That's really smart. So Sam will only go down to 1 here as he flips his deck. It means that had he not played Angel's Grace, he'd go to a negative life total and immediately be taking infect damage.
Sure.
You see ad nauseum right now. This is what happened last game. Basically, because he can't go below 1 life this turn, or he can't lose the game this turn, he can just put all the cards in his deck into his hand.
I believe it could have just been back up against something like Collected Company, Spell Pierce, playing around Caleb having 2 potential things, like Collected Company into, I don't know, Harmonic Sliver, and then Spell Pierce back up, something like that. Because
ad nauseum's not damaged, Sam actually still goes to a negative life total here. Angel's Grace says damage cannot put you to less than 1, and you can't lose.
Yeah. Well, given the mana available and the fact that he doesn't need to do anything with any of it, casting the Angel's Grace was kind of a free roll, and it just covers more theoretical bases.
All right, so Sam, as we've seen there, 1 by 1 has put his whole deck into his hand. That giant pile, which he's now scooping up, is his hand.
See, when that giant pile of the table is your graveyard, is kind of cool with Dredge. When
I
it's
like
your
when it's my hand.
Oh yeah, that's where I want to be.
It's how you win. 1 Spirit Guide was exiled, and he has no mana floating. It means to cast that Lightning Storm, he actually needs all 3 Spirit Guides and the Lightning Storm.
And, you know, in the post-sideboard game, it makes some sense for Caleb to make Jadin show him, obviously because this is the match, and because, you know, maybe he got fancy and boarded out a Simian Spirit Guide.
He's first going to Thoughtseize off City of Brass before going for it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if the 3 Pact of Negations in his hand didn't already win it, this one certainly does.
I also like doing this when you have the win rolled up and your opponent should know that you do. Just commit as many actions as possible. You know, it's on them to concede if they know that they're dead.
Yep, now he's showing, you have no cards in hand. Here's my stack of lands. Here are my 3 Spirit Guides, and here's my Lightning Storm. Just got to go find them all. Hold on. It's 1 red, 2 red. 1 more Spirit Guide if you can show it.
I think he flicked past it in his deck already and has to backtrack and actually find it.
Just looking, wait, make sure it's there. There it is. 3rd red, Lightning Storm, and a stack of lands. Game and match for Sam Jadin. He's going to move on to 11-1.
So basically, Jadin sees 2 lands face up, just needs to keep enough back, kill Caleb, and enough to redirect. Don't just go nuts and put all your lands on the table.
Right. There is this clause, and you see Caleb just making sure that Sam checks all the boxes. How Lightning Storm works is each player may discard a land to make the storm bigger and redirect it. So yeah, Sam does exactly enough to kill Caleb. Caleb had 2 lands, so if Sam had done something foolish like, say, pitch all my lands, then Sam would have lost. You don't get to 10-1 by not knowing how your deck works, though.
Right. It's a funny thing that happens when R&D designs a card. Lightning Storm is about having a fun sub-game in the game of Magic and Cold Snap Limited, maybe even in that standard format. But when it comes to its play in Modern, it's just a sure thing basically every time that you cast it in this deck. So kind of against the spirit of design, but really cool implementation when this ad nauseum deck started rolling around. And of course, the Laboratory Maniac, also the